at Liaison International. Some of you may be familiar with me. We're recording this session to go over the Configuration Manager panel. That way it can be sent to people who are not able to join us today, but I'm glad you guys were all able to make it. If you should be able to see my screen already, if you can't, please note that in the chat. Heather from PAEA is with us today, and she'll be able to take note of that and probably direct you to GoToMeeting if you're having trouble, but hopefully everybody should be all set at this point. So we're going to start with the configuration portal. All of you who are the administrator for your program on CASPA on WebAdmit should have access to this. It's going to look slightly different on your version than the one we're looking at right now because I do have an association level account. But this one is where I have my test information, so I wanted to use this one. For the most part, it's going to be the same though. Under the left-hand side panel, under administration, you will have a link that says CASPA Configuration Panel if you have access to it. And you want to click on that to start, and it might take a second to load. You will then have on this side, once you load into the configuration portal, all the services that you have access to. It might be that you just have access to CASPA, but if you do have other services, those will display here as well. So you want to select CASPA. And if this is not your first cycle with us, it's going to show the previous cycle you had on configuration as well. So it's very important that when you're trying to configure for the 16-17 cycle, which is the one that we're gearing up for right now, that you select the right one here because you don't want to be editing a program for the cycle that's already passed. Once you actually log into the correct cycle, most likely only your school is going to come up because I have access to all of the schools. I have an entire list that comes up, but yours would already be here. It might be if you have an organization that has multiple campuses and you have access to all 2 or 3 campuses, you'll see them, so you'd have to select the appropriate campus there. But I'm selecting the test one just for our demonstration purposes. Once you get to this section, this is where the programs that you have, these are each designations on the application, are listed. For most of you on CASPA, you're only going to have one here. I'm not even really familiar with any of the CASPA programs that would have multiple ones, so you would only have one. If this is your second cycle with us on configuration, the program that you had from last cycle should have rolled over, so you would only need to make edits to it. If this is your first cycle, then we will have filled in some of this information for you. So there will be a entry here, and your job will be just to add to it. This will be what it looks like. It will say a draft status, and if you hover over it, you'll have the ability to edit where it says this little pencil button with details. So you want to click on that to actually go into this configuration. So once you're in, you're going to come to this screen, and we want to actually edit this information. The name of your organization, this stuff has likely already been filled in. What has starred is the required information. Again, we probably already have filled in your city, state, all of this information. So what you need to be filling in is additional information like your level. Most of you are going to be a master's degree level here. Your start term, this is when your students would matriculate into your program, as well as the year. The open date for almost all of you is going to be April 27th, 2016, which is when the CASPA cycle opens, and that's when your designation will become available for applicants to select on the program. I do know some programs like to open later in the cycle. Some open maybe in May or June, or even later. If that's something that your program is doing, you want to enter the date that you want your application available to applicants in this open date section. And you probably also want to notify PAEA if you're planning to open delayed, because we do mark on our participating programs page on the application that you'll be opening, May 1st or June 1st or whatever the case may be, so the applicants are aware of why they can't select your program when we launch. The other very important piece is your deadline. This is the final date applicants are allowed to e-submit their application to your program on CASPA. CASPA does have predetermined deadline dates that probably have all been provided to you. If you're not familiar with them, it's June 15th, I believe we have, as well as August 1, September 1, October 1, November 1, December 1, January 15th, and March 1 is our final deadline. And so you want to make sure that you're picking one of our pre-designated deadlines, and all of those do expire at 11:59 p.m. Eastern on the actual deadline date. Now when it comes to deadline display, this is the deadline the applicants will actually see. Now most of you are going to want to select show deadline, which means that if your deadline is June 15th, then your applicants will see that your deadline is June 15th when they select the program. If you choose to do a different date, we don't particularly recommend this for CASPA. Some other services use this because they have a softer or hard deadline, but for CASPA, because we have predetermined deadlines and we also have a color coding system to indicate to applicants if your deadline is just an e-submit deadline or you expect the application to be complete or verified by that date. This is not a feature that most CASPA programs use, but it is available. The rolling designation also does display as rolling to your applicant pool. I know a lot of PA programs are on a rolling admissions basis. However, keep in mind that you are not, if you're on rolling admissions, you're not required to select rolling as your deadline display. We actually kind of don't recommend it only because if you do select rolling, then your applicants don't see what your actual final deadline is, which can be confusing to them. So that's just something to consider if you do want to select rolling. Your WebAdmit name is how your program will display in WebAdmit only. This is not what your applicants would see, so you do want to make sure that you're labeling this as something that will be helpful to you in WebAdmit. It also might be something where if you already have your WebAdmit name displayed, you might want to keep it the same to stay consistent from cycle to cycle. And then campus, if you do have multiple campuses, you could put what that is here. There are additional information sections. These aren't required. You see only the star ones are required. Delivery, what that means is on campus or usually online or distance learning. Those are usually what they're looking for there. It's somewhat of a vague term. And department is just a department of the school that your program is housed in. Once you have this all filled out, it's pretty easy. You just click Save. That just means that portion is saved, and where this will display is when applicants actually select your program on their application. It's added to the program materials section, which will show up for applicants. They'll have a separate program materials section for each school that they've listed on their application. And the next part that you want to be looking at is this little paint palette tool at the top, which is called our branding page. And this is where you can actually make that page that the applicants are going to see on their application look somewhat pretty. You can put a banner here. If you click Edit Header, you can upload a banner. There is some file size restrictions. If you don't abide by those file size restrictions, it's just going to look stretched or scrunched. So you want to make sure that you've resized the image to those if you're going to upload a banner, but it's not required. If you don't want to do a banner, instead you could just have your name displayed, and it will just display on a kind of a blank background. Some people also will just upload a blank kind of colorized background in which their organization name will kind of float above that. You can then edit the instructions, and what this is any information that your program might like to tell the applicant. It's an opportunity to maybe give them a little blurb about your program. Some programs also use this for important deadline information, requirements, maybe that you require the GRE and what your GRE code is. If you have a hard deadline that you need documents in by, all sorts of information. You can do a link to your PA program's website. Pretty much anything you want your students to know that gives them a snippet of that information when they take a look at this page. And I know that some people who've done this last year have gotten feedback about how applicants kind of interpreted that information or what they wished was there, what they wished wasn't there. And you can, if you put this in last year, this information will still be here and you'll have an opportunity to edit that information before the new cycle starts. So let's put in just some test information here. save it just to show where that shows up. So if you had this all filled out, you'd have a picture up here, your name, and then this would be all of your description information, links, contact information, anything like that. Now the third part of the configuration is these kind of customizable elements. So for CASPA, we have 3 options for personalized information that you can ask of the applicants that would be specific to your program. One of those options is questions. Now to turn any of these sections on, you actually have to check the box. And then once you check it, to activate that portion, because all of these are optional, a link will show up that you can actually click on to get to that section of the configuration portal. So if you decide to turn on that you want to ask the applicants questions that don't appear on the actual CASPA application that are specific to your program, such as maybe why are you interested in X program specifically, or what area do you want to concentrate in with our program, something that's more program specific, you can do that here. Something to keep in mind as you're thinking of questions that you might want to pose to your applicant pool. Again, this is completely optional. You don't have to turn it on. You don't have to use it. But if you do check this box off, you do have to make sure you actually add questions, because if you turn this on and do not add questions, then that makes this section required for applicants to fill out, but you've given them nothing to answer. So that can cause problems in submitting their application. So you want to make sure that if you do activate the page, you are entering in information for them to fill out. When you're considering questions, we do have a change to one of the CASPA, standardized CASPA questions this year on the actual application. In the past, if you're familiar with our application, you know that we asked something along the lines of, have you ever enrolled in a PA program before? That question has been expanded for the new cycle. So the new wording is going to say, have you ever previously been enrolled as a student in a physician assistant program, medical school, including foreign medical school, or any other health profession, including but not limited to TO, dentistry, physical therapy, chiropractic, podiatry, etc. So the applicants are already going to be asked to report if they've attended or if they've been accepted into a program for another health profession in addition to other medical schools or PA programs, and that's something that you may have considered as adding as a question. In this section, you no longer have to do that because that is now going to be included on the main application. But if you do have additional questions, there is an instruction box. This is not where you actually ask the question. This is just where you give the applicant instructions. And maybe you don't think that there needs to be instructions for this section, but if you have a guideline like we need you to, if you need to expand on a question, or that you're saying, oh, please answer, it can be as simple as like, please answer the questions below. It can be that simple. And you just save that. And then you have to click Add Question Set to actually add questions. And what I think is a little confusing for users here is Add Question Set does not mean add a question. It means you're adding a group of questions. So for example, maybe your header for your question set is, I'm going to pick on Wake Forest because I know Janie very well. So maybe it's very genetic. Maybe it's something like that, or maybe you actually have kind of a topic where you have a group of questions within them that you want answered. But this would basically be the title of your question set. This, you don't really need to have much of a description, but please review and respond. And what this does is it actually creates a header. And then you get to add the actual question. So I think where people get caught is they try to put in the question as the header, where that's actually an intermediary step. You have to create this header, and then you can actually put in the question. Now you do have the option of not making the question required. You can make it optional. So by clicking this button, this requires applicants to answer the question. If they don't answer it, they can't submit their application to your program. So keep that in mind. If you're asking a question that might not apply to everyone who's applying, you might want to make it not required and keep this turned off. Okay? And so here's where you can actually enter the question description, and we have various question types. So you can have a multiple choice question in which you can answer fields that the applicant can select, and you can say they can only pick one of those choices. or you would have them where they have multiple answer, where they can do, how many of the below, check off all that apply. And then we can say you want to use a checkbox, or maybe with single answer there can be a drop-down menu, radio button. You have a lot of options as for how you actually want this to look. You can do a short answer essay question, like maybe you want them to describe why they would like to attend your program specifically. And you can enter a maximum character count. Keep in mind that if you do this, characters are letters and spaces, not words. We've had some occasions where people put in they wanted, so many words, and they didn't realize that was characters, and all of a sudden they didn't have enough room for the applicants to actually answer their questions. You want to make sure you keep that in mind if you do the short essay questions. We also have this either or. That can be like a yes, no. Maybe you put yes and no as your options for, have you applied previously to our institution? Add that one. And so then you can kind of check this here by clicking the edit button, and you can see that those are the choices. You can add additional questions. These would all fall under the same header. Or you can choose another question set. If you have unrelated questions and you want to have a different header for a different group of questions, you can add a new question set. Okay? So once we have this done, we click the Save button. And let's go, I'm going to go to Prerequisites next. This is for applicants to self-report what they believe fulfills your prerequisites at your program. So this probably is a place where the instruction box would be important. You might want to have to discuss with applicants what you would consider to be fulfilling your prerequisite requirements. You might also want to mention what they should do if perhaps they're on a quarter credit system and you require so many semester credits. Anything to explain to the applicants what you're looking for when you want them to match up your prerequisites to courses that they've inputted in their coursework section. Keep in mind, when this comes over to WebAdmit on your admissions portal, you're not able to edit on your end what the applicant reports for their prerequisites. So if you want to create like a prerequisite GPA and have control over what is actually accounted for each of your prereqs, then you're going to have to also have a separate prereq section on WebAdmit that's controllable by you. But this is a good guide, and what a lot of programs use it for is kind of a way for applicants to consider, maybe I don't qualify for this program if I can't match enough courses to enough of these prerequisites. Maybe I should consider delaying my application, or maybe applying somewhere else where I'm a more qualified candidate. So to add a prerequisite, you would do this plus prereq button. And so what you want to put in for a title, you probably don't want to put in anything so specific that the applicants are confused as to what that is. So something that would probably be common is perhaps Anatomy and Phys 1 or something similar. And as a description, maybe you can say, equivalent one semester of anatomy at the 200 level or above. I'm completely making something up. But something along those lines, so you basically want to create a situation where the applicants are going to understand your intention and probably not bombard you with a lot of questions as to what you mean by this prerequisite requirement. Now the minimum grade, this is done numerically. So by putting in a minimum grade of a 3, that's obviously the equivalent of a B. So it's not done by letter grades. And then minimum credits, these are in semester hours. So if you put in a 3 for your grade and a 3 for credits, that's going to look for courses that fulfill those requirements on their coursework section, and the applicant would have to actually select them. Applicants can select more than one course for one prerequisite requirement. So if they have anatomy and physiology as a requirement, you can make that lab a separate requirement. You can combine it into one requirement, and the applicant, if their lab is separate on their transcript or on their coursework section, they could add both of those courses into that one prerequisite, so that they have some flexibility in their matching. And applicants also can choose to say, I'm choosing not to match a course to this prereq, so it will not block them from applying to your program if they can't fulfill every single prereq that you've listed. But they do have to put in a response for everyone, so they either have to say, yes, I'm matching this course, or I am electing that I'm not going to match any courses for this particular requirement. Okay. So once you have one in here, you want to save it, and then that will display, and you can add more by just clicking this prereq button and filling in these requirements. So the final section that you have is this document section. So if we activate this, this allows you to collect documents for your program specifically. It might be that you want a document that CASPA does not collect. So for example, we do not collect resumes on the CASPA application. If you would like your students to submit a resume, or you're going to require them to submit a resume, you can say that you request it. That makes it optional. If you want it required, you can then additionally select require. Then you can also select how many you're going to allow. Please keep in mind that if you do require a document and you select a maximum number, let's say I put in 2, the maximum number of a required document is going to require 2. So I can't say I require 1 resume, but I will allow up to 2. If I put in 2 here, it's going to require 2. Okay, so you probably, if you're going to require a document and there's only 1 that's required, you probably want to leave this number as 1. However, if it's an optional field, if you're going to say you can optionally load a resume and you want more than 1, I don't know why, but just in case you did, that would then allow the applicant to upload up to 2 documents in this category. Okay, and also because it's not required, they could get away with uploading nothing. So something to keep in mind. The military papers, that's usually used for applicants who have military service records. Maybe they have credits from the military, perhaps as medics. We don't no longer in CASPA accept arts or military transcripts. We do accept military schools, so if they went to West Point or Community College of the Air Force, we still take those. But if they just have military service transcripts, we no longer accept them. If your school is interested in taking them or reviewing them, then you could put that an applicant has the option to upload their military transcript here. Similarly, clinical professional, this is usually hospital transcripts. We no longer take transcripts from hospitals. So if an applicant has a hospital transcript and you'd like to review it, you can put this as an option. So if an applicant does have that information, they could upload it and you could review it. Other can be used for anything. If you do use the other field, you probably want to include in your instructions what that is referring to or what your expectations are for what's there. Same with licenses. Or really any of these things. If you're going to require any of them specifically, you might want to give the applicant some direction as to what you're looking for. There's this new thing here, of all of those that were with us last year might not recognize. It's this document type catalog course, and you've noticed that this is not something that you can edit. This was actually an enhancement this year, and it's not as a program specific request. It's something that's actually going to be an optional document upload on the CASPA application itself. So the applicant would do this once and all of their programs would see it. It's going to be something that basically says to applicants, you have the option for uploading a course description for a particular course. And they may do that for several reasons. An applicant might do that if they have a class that they feel like might not, from title and department, meet your requirements, but they think if they provided you with more documentation about that course, then they could show that it does meet those requirements. It might be that they feel like that based on the title and department, it's not classified properly on the CASPA system, but you can review this documentation that they provide, and maybe you would consider it perhaps a biology versus another science, or other options that the applicant might disagree with that we can't decide that for them because we only can go by the transcript information, but they would be able to upload that here and you would have access to review them. And that's optional. It's not required for any applicants, but all applicants will have that ability to do that. So that's a change from this year, and that's all that means. It's on configuration, but that's not really where it's going to appear on the application. It's not going to appear in your program-specific material. It's going to appear on the application as a whole. So once you've filled everything out and you've saved it, then you can go back to your program. Let's go back to this edit details button. And what we have new this year that we did not have before is we can preview the portions that you've filled out, and you can see what they will look like from an applicant's point of view, which is something that we did not have the ability to do last year, and something that is really beneficial, so that before you activate this program, if you can see what it looks like, if you don't like it, you can make changes. So for example, this homepage branding, I can click preview, and it will show what this page is going to look like to applicants. So if I had a pretty banner here, it would show. You can see that this is where the kind of description information will be, that if you filled out information for your program, and then this program details shows at the bottom. And then these are the tabs that the applicants have. So since we've activated documents, prerequisites, and questions on this test account, these all show. If you choose not to activate any of them, none of these will be here. Or maybe you've only chosen to do documents, then only that tab will show. So it's kind of good to spot check maybe what you activated. Keep in mind that this preview, though, is just a static snapshot. It's not functional. So, for example, if I click on documents, it's not going to go to documents because this is not a dynamic page. This preview is just a snapshot. Okay, so keep that in mind, too. You can close that window. If you do want to look at documents, you can preview it by going here. And this document information, I did not really do much. This is kind of the standardized text that appears in general on here. And then you can see what the applicants see, maybe what you've turned on. If you've said that they can have more than one, it would show the ability to add more than one. It shows if it's optional, shows if it's required. So this is good to spot check before that you commit to what you want your applicants to do, that you can see what they're going to see. We have the same thing here with questions. Keep in mind, because it's static, we can see this yes, no that I put in. If you do put in a multiple choice that has a drop-down menu, because it's static, you can't actually click on the drop-down menu to preview the options that you put in. So there is some limitation to this preview feature, but it is certainly nice to have it in here so that you can at least double-check your work. And then finally, we have the prereq section here. And so it shows there are one total prerequisites. Here's what we've put in, and here's our description. Okay, so once you've previewed everything, everything looks great, you're ready to kind of say, this is good, I'm done. What we have that's different this year is we actually have, let me go back to the front page here, is right now you can see that this is in draft status. And you are going to now submit this draft, which Danielle is going to be reviewing. And basically, she's going to do a secondary spot check. She's not going to be necessarily checking that you filled out your address information right, or that you've asked the questions that you want to ask. But what she is going to be looking for is, did you pick a deadline that is one of our, approved deadlines? Did you make sure it's going to open, if not on April 27th, then, this year, you didn't put in it's going to open in 2050. That if you've turned on questions, you actually have questions listed. If you've turned on documents, you actually have put in documents that you want the applicants to do. So just have someone else's eyes take a look at it and try to catch anything that might cause issues for the applicants before it goes live. So that's called our review process. Now, as I was saying earlier, I have a association level, so I have this activate button. Yours is going to look a little different. So I took a screenshot of what that looks like from your perspective. It's going to have this button that says submit for review. So when you're done and you are ready to send this program basically to Danielle to take a look at, you're going to click this submit for review button, and it's going to pop up this little pop-up window basically saying, are you sure that this is going to submit your program to a CAS administrator for activation? And so if you're ready, you can click submit. If you say, no, I still want to play with it a little more, maybe I need someone else at my department to take a look at it, then you want to click this continue editing button, and that will take you back to make changes. Okay, once you do click the submit button to send it into the review process, you will be blocked from making changes until that review process has happened. And what's going to happen is Danielle's going to take a look at it. If she thinks that there's something wrong, she's going to return it to this draft status and send you a notification saying, I noticed X, Y, and Z. I need you to take a look at it and correct it and send it back to me. or she's going to click activate, which means that your program is now active. Until your launch date, your open date, though, it's not available to applicants. So I just want to make that differentiation between it's been activated and that applicants have access to it, because that's two different things. But what it will mean is that you're pretty much ready to go. And if Danielle looks over it and she sees that everything looks good and you're ready to go and she's able to activate it, she will send you a confirmation that that has happened. So you will be aware of where your submission for review is in that process. What you need to keep in mind, Danielle has decided that the deadline to submit your programs for review is going to be March 28th. What she's going to do after that date is she's going to basically shut the configuration portal. So even if you have not submitted your program for review by then, you won't be able to access it. And that locks it down so that she's able to review it knowing that people aren't in there making changes while she's trying to review it. And so she's going to take a week to review them, and I think she's plans on having that all done by April 4th. So by then you should get a notification as to whether there's still more changes you need to make or you're ready to go. And then after that, if we have anybody that needs to be chased down, we'll probably do that at that time to get their configurations ready to go. So that's pretty much the configuration portal. If you do have additional questions, you can contact the WebAdmin support team. They can be reached by calling 716-636-7777 or by emailing webadminsupport@liaison, spelled liaison-intl.com. They're available for questions. If you have more CASPA or application-specific questions, you can contact either myself or Danielle, and she can answer those for you. And if you need additional training, we do run every other week. We do run configuration training webinars that you can sign up for, and the WebAdmin team can provide you the link to those if you'd like to sign up for them, if you feel like you need additional training or if you'd like to include additional staff who are not able to make it. Danielle's also going to be sending out a reminder with a deadline after this and this recording that you can provide to your colleagues as well. So that should be it for today. I know Heather's going to end the recording, and thank you for joining us.